Alright, hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel, guys. If you don't know me, my name is Andrew, and today I'm just going to be doing a breakdown of the classes required to get a psychology undergrad. So I'm making this video because I found it very difficult to find just a easy to access breakdown of classes and what they all are. And every school has different requirements, so I figured I'd just make a general one. So if you're interested in psychology, you could watch this video before you go and check out a bunch of schools and get overwhelmed. All right, so before we get started, I just want to say it's very important to define the field of study you're going into. So psychology is literally just the study of the mind, and as such, it's also investigating the minds of humans and animals. So pretty simple. I know it's a basic definition, but it's important to define things, I think, especially things that you're going to spend a long time studying. So in this video, I'm not going to do all the prereqs. I can make a separate video about that, but today we're just looking at the psych classes that are required to do the psychology major. So the only thing I want to say about prereqs is that typical undergraduate programs require 120 credit hours altogether, and usually about 48 from what I've seen, what I've done in my research and from my personal experience, about 48 of them are your actual major classes. So that's usually about 12 classes, depending how your university breaks down credit hours. And I do want to just throw in a general disclaimer. Some universities require different things, so you might have to do research. That's kind of rare for an undergraduate, but it's possible. You might have to do a capstone course, which is pretty much just a course that is like how your senior project, if you will. And then you might have to do labs and stuff like that. So just kind of keep an eye out. This is not supposed to be a completely universal video, but it is supposed to be general classes you're going to take in a psych undergrad. I did my classes through a community college, so I did 2 years of associate's degree. I got in accounting in just pretty much basic classes you have to take, so undergrad prereqs. And then I am doing my last 2 years. I'm on my very last year. I have a few more classes left in my psych degree, and they've pretty much all been psychology classes for the last 2 years. So this was a great way to do it. It saved me a ton of money to go to community college. I had no debt from that experience, and I'm gonna walk away with like $8 grand worth of debt from this experience. Online, I'm going to Southern New Hampshire. So let's get into it. So the first class you're going to take in a psychology undergrad that is related to your major is Intro to Psychology. So Intro to Psychology, in case you don't know, it's a very basic class about just like the history of psychology, the different perspectives. You're going to touch really basically on research methods, how we learn, memory, motivation. You'll see like Maslow's hierarchy, just very basic stuff like that. You'll probably learn about Phineas Gage and his tamping iron that went through his head. So like fun psych stories that'll kind of engage you and get you interested for the further classes to come. And then if you guys want just some information on the perspectives in psychology, I made a podcast episode about that. I will link below in the comments. All right, so the next classes, I'm going to jump right into it, are stats. So I had to take 2 stats classes. Every single psych degree is at least going to have 1 for your undergrad. In intro stats class, you're going to learn the difference between types of averages, so the mean, mode, the median. You're going to learn a little bit about the standard deviation, kind of like how to read graphs and charts. You might actually make some. And then finally, you're going to have to use Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets and look at spreadsheets and kind of analyze that data and learn how to use the codes for that a little bit. Nothing too difficult. It was a hard class, but you'll get through it just fine. And then my program, I don't think all of them recommend 2 classes or require 2 classes, but I also had to take a statistical literacy and psychology class. That was more so just looking at research and kind of like you'd look at a scientific journal and understand how the stats make sense and how they use the statistics in psychology to do research. So that one was a little more intensive. I actually thought the first class was harder, but the Intro to Stats class is great. It's going to give you a great foundation on stats. Also, if you want a book recommendation, you can get How to Lie with Stats by Daryl Huff. Really awesome book. Also very entry level, but it's kind of just cool to see how you can manipulate stats and stuff. Great knowledge to have in a psych undergrad. All right, and then the next class you're going to have is either a research design or a research methods class. The names are used interchangeably. It's really the same concept. This is pretty much just going to show you how research is done in an empirical, scientific way. So in psychology, that's going to be a big part of your focus. That's why you have stats class. It's a science, and we use research methods, and we understand double-blind studies and blind spots and limitations and strengths of different kinds of setups to understand research and how it's done properly. All right, so another class you're probably going to take, or you'll take some variation on it, is social psychology. This is literally just understanding how people affect each other. You're going to look at things like prejudice, in-group, out-group biases, relationships, friendships, persuasion, stuff like that. So social psychology is a good course. It's going to be probably something required or something very similar like that, like cultural psychology or socio-cultural psychology. It's a whole bunch of names for it. All right, so another course you're going to take most likely is cognition. So cognition literally just looks at how our brain works, how our mental processes work to understand learning, memory, perception, attention span, stuff like that. So cognition is a great class to take. It's going to give you a very good understanding of psychology, how the brain works. It's not so neuroscience-y, but it kind of crosses the line occasionally to neuroscience and the physical workings of the brain. All right, so the next class you're going to take, and this is probably a fan favorite of psychology students, is abnormal psychology. So this course gives you a brief look into a bunch of different personality disorders, mood disorders, eating disorders, stuff like that. And then it also goes over basic perspectives on these disorders, basic treatments, basic clinical methods, and everything like that. So it's pretty much the course that people expect to take when they're getting an undergrad psych degree. So this one's gonna be a lot of fun, it's gonna be interesting, and you'll enjoy it. All right, so the next one I have on my list is a personality course. So I personally took theories of personality, but you'll take some variation on it like that. It'll be personality something. You're gonna learn things like the big 5 ocean traits. So trait theory, you're gonna learn the psychoanalytic theory, a little bit of behavioral theory, stuff like that. So it's like stuff that you've probably already seen in your intro to psych course, but it's gonna go more in depth. This is a great course, it's very comprehensive. If you guys want some information on that course before you actually go look into it, Jordan Peterson has an entire personality psychology course on his YouTube channel. Awesome, highly recommend you check it out. And it's just very interesting. This was actually my favorite class I've taken so far, even above abnormal psych. All right, so another class you'll probably have, depending on which field you're going to go into, this could be different, but most psychology students are going into psych to do some kind of clinical practice. So this one is Intro to Clinical Psychology. So this is just gonna look at the various roles that clinical psychologists have, different subfields in clinical psychology, and then it's just gonna go over basic historical methods and practices, and then how they've changed and what today's methods and practices are. All right, so another class you'll probably have, or again, some variation, is evolutionary psychology. All right, so evolutionary psychology was like a big shift in how we saw the mind and understood the mind. All right, so things you're gonna see in this field is different sex differences, cultural differences, and then those topics are going to be looked at from an evolutionary perspective. So how did these sex differences or these cultural differences evolve to keep us alive through thousands and thousands of years? All right, the next course you will most likely have some variation again on this is developmental psychology. So developmental psychology is the study of human development through the lifespan, so different stages in life. You're going to look at different developmental theories in this class, and you're going to see the biological, psychosocial, and cognitive changes that happen to people throughout their lifespan. So some other courses you could take in developmental are child development, adolescent and youth, adult and aging, or moral development, which is pretty interesting. So the next course you'll probably take, or some variation, is industrial organizational psychology. So this is literally just workplace psychology. So things you're going to learn about in this course is just general assessments, motivation, hiring, work-life balance, and then you'll see how different personalities affect the workplace and employee satisfaction and job fit and all that kind of stuff. All right, so the next one on here is actually another one of my favorites. It's health psychology. So if anybody doesn't know, health psychology is kind of like a mix of physical medicine with psychology. It's looking at like the mind-body connection. So if anyone has never heard of the biopsychosocial approach, that is the biological, the psychological, and the social and environmental factors that all affect the human being. So health psychology looks at the holistic individual, and it's very interesting. I really learned a lot in this course. It was almost like taking a nursing course, and then with psychological principles kind of intermingled without. So it was really interesting. I loved this course. If you're thinking about going to healthcare or any healthcare in psychology, even clinical psych, I would highly recommend you look into health psychology and take this course. All right, so that's pretty much 12 basic courses you're gonna take, or some close variation. In addition, you'll have to take 2 electives. This is usually after your prereqs, so you get electives to go along with it. An elective I recommend is logic. I think logic is a good course to take for literally any field. It's like math and reason combined. It helps you become a very well articulated person. I highly recommend a logic course. And then other courses that you can take as electives in a psych degree if you want to take more psych classes, which I'd always recommend more psych classes if you're going into the field. So ABA is applied behavior analysis. This is good if you want to get into working with people with autism. I know a lot of places have opened up recently doing ABA centers and stuff. I have a lot of friends in that field, so just to get a basic one-on-one ABA course would probably be good, especially if you're considering any kind of populations like that. You can also take a psychopathy course. So this is psychopathy? Psychopathy. It's child and adolescent are the options usually, and that's just going to look again at like what goes wrong with the mind. You can take an emotion course, that's pretty interesting. You can take a motivation, this one's awesome, especially if you're going to industrial organizational psychology. Motivation is a great course to take. You can always take more history of psychology courses if the university offers it. I'd always recommend that. You can also just read books really on that. You don't necessarily have to have a structured course you're spending a lot of money on for that. You can take a neuroscience course. That's awesome if you're thinking about going into the cognitive perspective, the biological perspective. All right, guys, so those are the basic courses that you're going to see in undergrad. If you're going into anything, like you want to be a clinical psychologist, or you want to be a health psychologist or an industrial organizational psychologist, I'd recommend aligning up your classes with that so that in your master's you're already more familiar with those courses. It never hurts to be more prepared as long as you know what you're doing. But if you're not sure what you're doing yet, I just recommend taking the courses I have listed, because those are all different fields of psychology that are going to give you a very wide perspective and understanding on the field. So that's a psych undergrad. That is 48 credits that you could take of psych courses, and most likely you're going to take a majority of those courses. I know you'll at least take the one stats course, intro to psych, and you're going to take some kind of research methods course, and then the other ones kind of vary depending on what you're interested in and what field you want to specify in. All right, so thank you guys so much for watching. That is pretty much a psych degree in one video, and you guys have a good day and good luck out there.